Cool, it's great to see everyone here this morning. It's pretty cool to be up here talking to such a big crowd of people in Auckland who's here to see what's going on in this space. I'm really passionate about it, and it's great to see that other people are interested in it, and I can see a few people in the audience I recognise who are definitely passionate about it. We've got a great story to tell today about what Centrality is doing in this space to help achieve some of those outcomes that Mark was talking about earlier. I'm Aaron McDonald, if you don't know me. Been around the tech traps for a while now. Founded Centrality about 2.5 years ago, and now more than 20 blockchain companies advised for or on the boards of or co-founded. So we're not doing things by halves. And I think this year, not to gloat too much, but the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year recognised the efforts that we've done in this space, what I think is a really exciting step for the industry to have such a rigorous process to go through, and out the back of it comes a blockchain company. So I think we're getting to the point now where this stuff is beyond fringe and getting into mainstream. I broke my leg. I'm a skier as well, so that's why I'm sitting here on stage on the chair, not strolling across the stage as I normally would. So please bear with me as I get through this. We went and did a little bit of a search and found a shoot ton of companies in New Zealand that are involved with blockchain and are building in blockchain. This is by no means all of them. I think this is the most that Jordan could fit on the slide without it looking too messy. She's a bit of a perfectionist. So there's tons of companies out there that are innovating in this space, and we're proud to be, a decent chunk of the New Zealand industry. Up at Crypto Hill, there we've got now, I think, 6 floors of companies that are working on blockchain projects with us. So really massive amount of growth happening in this space, and if you haven't seen it already or you haven't realised how big this is, I think now's the time to wake up and have a look. We've heard a lot actually over the last probably 5 years, maybe a bit more, about the sharing economy, and I have always looked at that as a bit odd. People talk about the Ubers and the Airbnbs and those things as being part of the sharing economy. And to me, it's always puzzled me, because when my dad taught me about sharing when I was a young kid, not the sharing the sheep, I did that, but sharing with my brothers and sisters, it was a good thing. It felt mutual. It felt like we were both getting something good out of it, and it would be both being treated fairly. And I think in this sharing economy, it's a little bit of a mind trick, because we seem to share a lot, and then these big companies get rich, which doesn't feel like sharing too much. And we fast forward a little bit, we've got this growing digital economy, this data economy, this information economy that's built up over the last 10 years of the internet. And what that looks like or feels like to me is a sharing economy, the kind that you would have, sharing with the devil. Facebook and the likes have been likened in studies to using Class A drugs. So if you can look at this sharing economy as, you share your digital soul with the devil, Zuckerberg, and for the benefit you get to live in hell, which, seems like a fair bargain for him. I hope that with this digital gold, our information that we have now, like Mark talked about earlier, we can create a different kind of sharing economy. A social economy, one that respects people and treats them fairly and is inclusive. I think we can build a privacy-oriented economy where our digital self is respected in the digital world. And I think that doing this is a very important thing, because the way that the information age is evolving, it's getting easier and easier for companies with large amounts of data to analyze that data and figure out how to manipulate us. If you think about it, that's the purpose of internet technology and innovation over the last 10 years, has been fundamentally in the ad tech space. And these giant data brokers are spending all of their days figuring out how to take signals from us and use that information to manipulate our thoughts. If we take that to the next stage, as AI becomes even smarter, and that information hoard that they have, they can process into new types of manipulation, social manipulation, manipulation in politics, all those kinds of things. It's an extremely dangerous opportunity, set of circumstances for the future, because these manipulations can be so subtle that we don't even know they're happening. And so freedom of thought and action in the future is going to come down to how well we protect our personal information. And there isn't another type of technology out there that can help us do that in a way that can't be corrupted by corporations. So that's why this is so important to get right. What we're here to do is we're here to help build that uneconomy, the next economy, the real sharing economy, a social economy, an economy driven by privacy at its core. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're doing there, but then we're going to show you some stuff. So what are we doing? We're building an app store with a decentralized twist. We're building the tools that developers need to create great experiences in the decentralized space. And we're helping those app developers connect to each other so they're not fighting one-on-one against the incumbents that are out there. So imagine a community of applications. We have a motto: we don't want to create a unicorn, we want to create 1,000 zebras, all moving together in a herd, working together to make a strong ecosystem that stands against those incumbents who don't have your best interests at heart. In order to do that, we can't rest on our laurels of decentralization. We actually have to build something that is better at everything than the current suite of applications that consumers use. Our biggest enemy in this is apathy. And if we can't overcome apathy, then no matter how good the technology is for us, it's not going to be used. Anyone who's not seriously working on how to make applications easy for consumers to use doesn't really care about decentralization. And that's why we're focusing very hard on making apps that have better economic incentives for the users and the developers and the infrastructure providers, that have more frictionless user experiences across the ecosystem, and that protect users' privacy better. If we can nail these three things, I think the next economy of applications in the decentralized world will be successful. But it's not good enough just to be blockchain. So what are we doing in our ecosystem? We've got three key components. The first is the blockchain infrastructure layer. So we have an SDK called Plug, which is being designed to help developers create blockchains that are good for different kinds of things, but allow those blockchains to talk to each other. We don't believe that there is one kind of chain that suits all types of applications. I've been working in technology for 20 years, and people talk about scaling blockchain technology. Generally what they mean is fast transactions per second, but that's actually not important. If you want to scale an application for 100 million users, there's way more things than being fast that are important. How do you manage upgrades? How do you ensure that your application responds to customer needs and adjusts so that they feel like they're getting a good experience? You know, if you have to wait for the life cycle of Ethereum's community to make a change to the framework so you can implement a new feature in your application, that's not scalability. So Plug allows us to create a scalable set of blockchains that can interact with each other. Centrality is the glue, if you like, the app store that builds on top of that framework for consumer applications. So we're building a specific type of blockchain that's geared towards mass market consumer apps and provides a set of services for developers inside of there. We also incubate applications through this process to help them get to market and use each other's strengths to scale. We'll see how that actually works in the next section. And then just today, especially for Auckland, we are announcing a new brand. We used to go under the moniker of Blockhouse, but we've expanded that now. I think Mark talked in the previous slide around emerging models that combined the traditional ICO utility tokens and securitized assets or tokens. So to kind of keep in track with that trend, we've purchased a whole bunch of companies, broker-dealers, alternate trading systems, funds to get the necessary licenses to take these products into the next generation of offerings and services in New Zealand and around the world. So we'll be talking more about that. I think this year so far, the ICO market's not been as hot, but it's still been relatively active. One of our business units, Causality, does data analytics, and they've analysed this year's ICOs, and there's more than $2 billion been raised this year in ICOs so far, so it's definitely not dead. And of that $2 billion, our systems and tools inside of this global chain group have raised about 10% of that. So it's a material operation in the scale of this blockchain space, and we're looking forward to that future, working closer with regulators to bring these exciting new products to market and fuel this ecosystem, fuel this new economy. So what does our stack look like? So from the bottom up, we've got the blockchain SDK plug, which we then take and have built the SensNet blockchain network. And inside of SensNet's blockchain network, we have built a bunch of core services for applications to use, and then those applications build using those services. So this is a typical platform stack. And we built this in a way that makes it friendly for developers to develop with. We showed everyone in the workshop yesterday how that can work, and also friendly for consumers to use. So instead of talking about it, I think I'll get into showing a little bit about how it works. So if I could have Kelvin pop out on stage. We've got a couple of demo dollies today who can come and show the technology working. Okay, so Kelvin's going to do a demo of single source for us. And what single source is you can imagine it as the single sign-on for accessing the Centrality ecosystem. So Kelvin will get into the demo and I'll start to talk about it. So in the olden days, you would give away your private information to someone like a Google or a Facebook, and they would allow you to sign into different applications. In our ecosystem, we want that same kind of experience that consumers are used to, but we want to do it in a decentralized way.
Perfect. All right, let's get started. So first thing we can do.
Yeah, so Kelvin's going to come through and create a basic account in the ecosystem. So this is kind of like a anonymous account that can start to interact with applications at that level. And how keep going through, Kelvin, how the applications work with this is that you can step up your levels of anonymity as you go through the stack. The more trusted you need to be with an organization, the more information you might have to validate. The way that happens is in a decentralized way, and it keeps your information locked in your private vault. So Kelvin's set up the vault now. He's got an anonymous ID. He can start to interact with applications. There's 2 bits to the app here. Just keep going through, Kelvin. You've got the ability to manage your ID, to add additional validations, and then you've got the ability to interact with different applications with that ID. So what Kelvin's doing now is some biometric tests, and he's taking a photo. What we're looking for there is proof of life. So in that test, we've got the ability to determine if it's a real human being, and we know that the photo they took was of that real human being. In the next step, we're going to take a government ID, this case a New Zealand passport, and Single Source is the first blockchain application in the world to be linked directly to a government ID verification service. So we can not only extract the information out of this, we can also take the photo from the ID and compare it to the live person that was there before. We can also prove that it's a real New Zealand passport at the same time. Kelvin's going through now and adding other bits of data to authenticate. So in this case, we're verifying that he has a cell phone and that he owns that cell phone. And all of this information is taken to create scores in the back end. So we can give credit scores, risk scores, identity scores, a whole bunch of different things that applications can interact with in order to provide services to Kelvin.
It might seem quite a long time, but at the end of the day, we're only having to do this only once. So if you think about your identity, we're trying to reduce a lot of that replication. So we're nearly there. If I can type properly today, there we go.
Don't work with live demos or children, they say. So now we've got a somewhat verified profile. Calvin's actually going to go into this screen now, before you do that, Calvin, and try and log into our Kiwi Credit Union, which is a test site that we've set up. Calvin's profile's now authenticated with a bunch of stuff, and he's been given a low risk score. He's got 6 verified attributes, and he's currently interacting with no applications. So we can come across here, and this can be any website. This doesn't have to be a blockchain application. This can be any application that wants to treat their customers' data as their own and respect their privacy.
Perfect.
So in this, we've got 2 options. We can go in through create a regular account, or of course, we will log in with single source. So when we click this, what's happening is we kind of fetch over the tethered Wi-Fi.
There we go.
A QR code. So Calvin can now go into his single source application on his phone and scan that QR code.
So I'll just scan it now.
Now, next what happens is we've associated Calvin with this login, and it's gone in and said, do you want to grant access to sign in? So we scroll through there and we see, actually this website requires a verified address, and we haven't verified our address yet. So it can be an interactive experience depending on what the application on the other side needs for authenticating that user. This is a bank, and so they need to have a verified address. So what Calvin's going to do now is going to go through and try and verify his address, and we create a proof of location score that takes a range of different data inputs in order to determine whether this is a reasonable assumption to make that this address is true. So that includes information like a utility bill, the address of your house being a valid address, the location of your cell phone being in the area that you're trying to validate, and then we can come up with a score that can be used by organizations to determine. And if you think about the processes that happen in this space today, what typically happens is you're handing all this information over to maybe a bank teller or something like that, or emailing someone over the internet, and there's a huge degree of variability in the way that people perceive and process that information. Biases can be introduced. Maybe they were hungover and they had a bad day, didn't really check it properly. Using this type of methodology, you can get an absolutely consistent and unbiased approach to making these validations happen.
Perfect.
So now we've filled that in. We've got the information. We'll log in. It's asking for access to all that information, so you're agreeing to provide it for this thing. And actually, we can do this in 2 ways, depending on the application. The way we like the best is for this bank to accept that if we've validated something, then it's true. And in that case, they don't actually need to see the actual information. They just need to know there's proof that it is true and that it's real. And they can accept that user and process them for the purposes of authenticating them into the system. Or the user can grant that information to the system and it can hold that information. But the cool thing is what it doesn't have to hold it in its own database. It fetches it from the user's profile. So if the user updates some information in the future, a new passport, for example, the client side can actually pull the latest information and check that that's verified. So they don't have to be responsible for storing the customer's data. So there you go. That's a full single source flow completed with the login. We're going to go now and switch to Silo. So I'm going to bring on Ben, who's the product manager for Silo. And Ben's going to take you through Silo.
That I am. So good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. I'm going to take you very quickly through a product called Silo, once I've figured out how to steal the screen back. So, what is Silo? Silo is a decentralized communication application. So within the Centrality ecosystem, you have single source for identity, and then you have a toolkit that underpins that, which allows two parties or businesses to connect confidentially and directly. So we are the communication and the storage toolkit within the Centrality ecosystem. And we've created a user-facing communication application that caters to the problems of data ownership and security, and dealing through centralized messaging infrastructures that we all have to deal with today. As you can see, it's reasonably familiar in terms of how it looks and feels. We want this thing to feel like it could become mainstream, and we firmly believe that for blockchain in general and decentralization to become mainstream, it has to be simple, it has to be easy, and it actually has to be better than what's out there currently. So what we've done is we've combined confidential communication with wallet functionality so that you can pay in new and interesting ways, and a marketplace of applications. So we feel if you can access a whole range of different features and functionalities from within the same application, you can actually begin to work together with a whole range of different companies and businesses to bring features and value to your users without users having to go and get new accounts or new identities for each and every service.
Imagine commerce in the application being available to businesses to communicate on this protocol with authenticated users who've completed all of that know your customer information that Calvin had shown us through before. So we can start to build new types of interactive applications that can securely transfer value against authenticated users.
So I'll take you through a bit of what we've got here. So as you can see, I've got a whole list of contacts here. The thing to remember when you're looking at this is that none of it requires a central authority to work, and none of this content is actually stored in a single place. So nodes bring their resources to the network, and they allow me or Aaron or whoever's using this to communicate in a way that doesn't mean we have to rely on a single point at any place. Over here we've got my profile. So as you can see, I've got that single source verified tick, which means that I can be trusted within the network, whether I'm dealing with companies, people, even my fridge. It's, you know, I am who I say I am, and there is a party that has vetted that this particular address or this public address is actually Ben Jordan.
And we don't laugh too much when we say fridge, because single source is a framework for authenticating a whole bunch of things. So we have know your customer, which is kind of a typical use case, or know your business. We also have know your machine, so authenticating devices in the world of IoT, and know your product for authenticating, you know, things you sell to customers, which we'll show a little bit later in one of the other sessions. Cool, let's get into it.
Cool, so fully decentralized messaging. Again, not through any central authority. And then of course we have fully decentralized calling as well, which we can show. Do you want to give me a call?
Okay. Video?
Why not?
Hey Ben.
Hey Aaron.
You're now on the blockchain.
So we use the blockchain there for establishing relationships. And then one thing that I'm sure you will know is that you don't actually want everything on the blockchain. So we've used the blockchain where it counts or where we need to, and then that's underpinned by our fully decentralized storage network.
So you can think of like a decentralized Dropbox built, and on top of that we've built a decentralized Skype protocol that anyone can go and build applications with.
Now, of course, this is blockchain, so payments are a very real thing. So what we can do is we can now easily transfer value. So one of the big problems in the blockchain space or in the cryptocurrency space at the moment is that it's actually very difficult to do very simple things. You have to deal with public addresses, which aren't very user-friendly at all. And in general, it's just not something that is very easy to use for the average person. So what we've done is we've tied public addresses to actual people. So just like you're sending a message, now you can send money.
So yeah, I've requested just by simply hitting the pay button, typed in how much I want, sent that as a message to Ben, and then Ben's going to be able to pay me.
So in our wallet, you can hold a whole range of different cryptocurrency assets. And assuming we could have connected to the outside world, what we would have seen is, as you can see there, we've done a couple before, but transactions that have left. So yeah, our way of making blockchain real by bringing everything together and putting it in a familiar fashion for people so that they can understand exactly what's going on.
Cheers, thanks guys.
Cool, thanks very much.